Hey folks, Jason Wilmot here, and thank you for joining Retargeting IQ. I'm thrilled to have you here. What I'm excited about is relaunching this Retargeting IQ. So we developed this and launched it about 2 years ago. Nonetheless, there's been a lot of changes in retargeting and ad platforms since the initial launch. So in the past, we've had over 100 people take this masterclass that you are about to take. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to update what we've done before and add on a lot. So really what we're going to be adding is a focus on GA4, Google Analytics 4. The old version had Universal Analytics, and there's been a major update in that. So we're going to cover GA4. We're going to use GTM, that's Google Tag Manager. We're still going to discuss UTMs. And in the last masterclass, we only focused on meta ads, being Facebook and Instagram. In this case, I'm also going to show you how to set up your ads on, or your marketing ads on Google Ads as well as TikTok. So I'm excited to get this going. My screen is over here, but the camera's right here. So I'm going to be walking through this presentation, and I'm going to be going back and forth. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So just to give you an example, we've worked with a lot of different clients. You're going to see some brands on here that you definitely recognize, but I don't want to go in too far. What I want you to see, though, is this is a wide spectrum. We have service-based businesses in this. We have influencers that we've worked with. We have e-com, and we also have SaaS. So really what I want to do is be able to speak to anyone and everyone in this masterclass. If you are in e-com, and if you're an agency and you're running e-com stores, if you are running service-based businesses, that's great. If you are a service-based business, if you are an e-com store, all of this should apply to you. And ultimately, there's going to be a few nuances and a few pieces in here that you may have to do some additional research on, specifically on Google Analytics GA4 when it comes to your website. But really, all of this will hold true. The foundations that I'm going to present to you are going to be universal no matter what niche that you are in. So just to give you a few more just kind of stories, why this works, right? This is a great testimonial from Alpha Brewing Operations. We took them from $14 million in revenue a year to $24 million in just 1 year using the principles that I'm about to teach you. It wasn't only retargeting, although retargeting was a major element in that. But at the end of the day, what they did not have is a data tracking system. They were spending money on ads, but they didn't know how to understand it, how to read that. And so what I was able to do is come in with our team, and we really leveraged data. We really leveraged sort of end-to-end tracking, and we scaled what was working and we cut back what was not. So this is an example of a call booking funnel or request to quote. So that's really the main piece right here. So one of our major partners is a SaaS company called CompanyCam, or I think they're on track to be a $500 million company right now. We manage a lot of ad spend for them. But again, I help these guys really build this foundational architecture of how to spend money and how to see if it's working, and then spend more money on top of that growth. And then one final influencer that we work with is a drink called Glow. They have brand ambassadors like Kylie Jenner and Dak Prescott. And so we leverage this sort of, we leverage this play as well for e-com. So that's what I want to show you, a service-based business. I want to show you a SaaS example, and now here's an e-com example. So here's my big promise to you. This is where I'm going to turn my screen and read a few things, but by the end of this training, you will be able to implement a data-rich UTM tracking system with GA4. A lot of words there, a lot of fluff, but I can't emphasize enough that at the end of the day, no matter what ads we're running, no matter what energy you are putting out, it has to yield to data. And I will show you how to, set this up. Now, this is not an exhaustive training on GA4. We have one of those, but it's going to give you enough like a solid footing that you can go ahead and get started on this. So, but in order to use GA4, we have to use something called Google Tag Manager. And what we're going to do in there is we are going to deploy our tags and our pixels. Then we're going to create a retargeting campaign on Meta and on TikTok and on Google Ads. Now, I should say this, I'm getting ahead of myself. This cannot be an all-encompassing masterclass on how to do every single one of these things. I'm not going to show you exhaustively the ins and the outs of Meta ads or TikTok or anything. We are going to solely focus on retargeting and remarketing. That's it, because that is where the easy money is. Once you start making more money from your retargeting, that's when you can invest into inbound ads. And so what I want to do is, this is not exhaustive training on all things ad platforms. Why? Because the UX always changes. Or I should say the UI is always changing, and so I don't want to get caught up in that. But this will have foundational principles that can be applied, and even if the UI changes in these ad platforms, your thinking will remain the same. So what is remarketing and what is retargeting? What I do want to do is sort of talk about what this is and then what it used to be. So again, I'm going to read my screen here. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that, but here we go. So remarketing or retargeting. Remarketing is on Meta and TikTok. It is on Google. Retargeting is the term that is used on Meta and TikTok. So that refers to the strategy of displaying personalized advertisements. They might not always be personalized. We can talk about the difference there. To individuals who have previously interacted with your website or engaged with your brand through an ad platform. And from a technical standpoint, this method involves implementing a JavaScript tag, also known as a pixel, which deposits a cookie on the user's browser. However, in a more advanced setup, a user can use offline conversion data called Facebook Conversion API to send data back to advertisers, even if somebody has opted out of cookies. So again, some people have opted out of cookies, and we can still retarget them, because when we're in ad platforms, we can see who has engaged with the ad, who has watched videos, who has clicked a call to action button. Now, a lot of iOS users have opted out of cookies, meaning once they leave the platform, then the cookie goes away and it can't be blocked. Well, Facebook and other platforms have gotten around this in a way called a conversion API. And so if somebody does take action on a website, if they put in their email, if they buy something, we can actually take that and then send it back to the ad platform. So we have really three cases here where somebody hasn't opted out of cookies. That's perfect. We can retarget them as is. Somebody has opted out of cookies. Well, what we can do is we can know who leaves the ad platform, and the ad platform knows that. And so we can retarget those folks. Or if we have a more advanced system like Facebook Conversion API, then you can leverage that. Now, I'm not going to get into Facebook Conversion API setup. There's also something called Google GCLID, which is your Google Click ID. Again, we're not going to focus on that in this. We are focusing on audience segmentation, tracking, and getting these ads up. So here's what I would like you to think about, though. Now, in my past, I used to be an elementary school teacher, so I really like this foundational principle of understanding what I'm doing, and that's what I'm trying to do here. We're going to get to the how-to, and we're going to fly through it, but what I want to do is lay this foundational principle for you before we get into this. So when we talk about retargeting, we have to think about something called events, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in Module 1. But what an event is something happening in the background. Typically, let's say it's JavaScript firing. So if somebody fills out a form, then there's JavaScript firing to send an event. Hey, a form was filled out. In e-com, an event would be, did they look at a product? Did they add the product to a cart? Did they initiate checkout? Did they purchase? Those are all unique events. And so what we want to do is we want to use GA4 as our system to really detect all of these events and just pull them in so that we can look at what is making a difference for us. And what I mean by that is if we're spending our time, money, and energy on ads or retargeting or cold email or word of mouth, if we can attach these things called UTMs, which we'll talk about in a second, all the way into our Google Analytics, we will have a very, very, very good idea of what is working and what is not. That allows you to scale, right? That allows us to scale Alpha Brewing. That allows us to scale Company Cam. That allows us to take our data to make smart decisions with it. So GA4 is really the spot where we're going to be really harvesting this data and making our decisions. But in order to send those events into GA4, we have to use something called Google Tag Manager. We're going to send in specific events, and I'm going to show you how to do that in this case. Now, some platforms might have a native integration with GA4, but most do not. So I use Kajabi. Kajabi does do that, and I'll show you kind of where that is. But for the most people watching, I'm going to assume that we don't have that native integration, and we are going to use Google Tag Manager to leverage that. Now, we have this Google Tag Manager to send in events. Now what we need to do is actually, now that we have that foundation built, what we're going to do is we're going to segment audiences and start retargeting individuals. So we're putting our retargeting ads in front of warm prospects. I say warm because they've already engaged with our brand. Perhaps they've already been to our website. Perhaps they started filling out a form but left. Perhaps they added something to their cart but they didn't buy. So we're going to take ads and put them in front of people. So the only way that we can put ads in front of those people, though, is if we fire these events. And so we will tell Meta, we'll tell TikTok, hey, if this event occurred, then I want you to remarket these people. So we'll get into all of this, but I'm trying to lay this foundation. Now, UTMs might be an element that you are unfamiliar with. Maybe you've heard about these, but this ties everything together. Without UTMs, what you're going to be doing is flying blind in your Google Analytics. But UTMs attach that click all the way back to those events so that you can know which ad group, which ad set, which ad platform. Was it cold email? What was it? You can make very sound decisions based upon that data, and the way that you tie those clicks all the way to those events in your GA4 is through something called UTM. So I'm going to walk you through all of this, and I'm going to walk you through this in sort of a logical fashion that you understand every single component of this. And this is what I would say. Don't necessarily skip ahead to just Meta, or don't skip ahead to just TikTok. And again, we're going to keep this concise, and we're going to keep this at a foundational principle set so that we are focusing only on getting GTM, GA4, and all of these ad platforms singing and working together. So if you want a more in-depth training on all of this, I do have a course out there, or a masterclass called Mastering Funnels. And really what we do is we leverage this framework of thinking. Now, frameworks of thinking aren't necessarily sexy things to sell, but at the end of the day, I don't care who could come to me, and I don't know what your offer is, whether you're a coach, consultant, an agency, an e-com, a lead-based business, a service industry. If you come to me, this is the exact way that I'm going to think through your funnel. If we were coaching you, if we were providing services for you, it would always start this way. And this is always the same for every niche, for anything else. We always have to think about the architecture. What does the architecture framework look like for this funnel? The C I call this the Acuri framework. So the A stands for architecture. The C stands for conversions. At the end of the day, what are we trying to do? What is the end point of this funnel? What are we trying to get somebody to do? Opt in, buy, book a phone call, request a quote, start a free trial. It's always something. They're different, but we always have to have that conversion. Then there's that UTM tracking. And what we want to do is we want to connect everything that we can into GA4 so that we can make sense of the data. Then we turn on retargeting and we build this remarketing engine. Notice we haven't turned on inbound ads yet, because what we want to do is we want to think about the funnel from the bottom up. Who's the closest to the bottom? The people who have initiated checkout but didn't buy. The people who started filling out a form but did not submit the form, right? The people who have started a free trial but haven't swiped their credit card. Those are the people that we want to focus our time, money, and energy on first, because this is an engine, this retargeting engine will run 24/7, day and night, getting our message to the people who have already raised their hand to say that they're interested. We want to spend money on the people most likely to convert first, rather than throwing top of funnel ads out there. Then, the most important part, or I guess I shouldn't say this, the most fun part is the inbound targeting, split testing, and scaling. Once we have this framework already built, we know that we can track everything. We know that if somebody comes into the funnel, they're going to be retargeted. That's when we can start running more experiments. And experiments aren't really guessing, because we have this UTM information attached to everything, so that we can send in traffic. We can know which ads are performing, which platforms are performing, and we can understand kind of the efficiency of each ad set, each platform. And then because we have that data, that enables us to scale. So if we're spending $100 a day, we can walk it up to eventually $1,000 a day. There's clients that we are spending $10,000 a day or $300,000 a month. That is only the case when you have this system or this framework, because you can't be spending that amount of money without understanding sort of all the other principles behind this. So I wanted to just give you a quick just sort of understanding on why and how I think through every single funnel and really where the framework is. Now, last, before we get started, I do want to spend some time on what this training is and what it is not. So it is a training or a framework designed to walk you through how to leverage a retargeting or remarketing system. Ideally, this is for revenue growth, right? So the tools and the UI may change, but the foundational principles will remain. Like I said, TikTok may update their ads manager. So might Google. I mean, Google's always updating their ad. Google Ads is always updating. And so is Meta. So there's always new features or new audiences or like different targeting options. That's going to change, but the foundational principles of this will not. So, and then the last thing I'll say is like, full knowledge of GA4 and GTM and Meta and Google, it's too much and it's a beast. So this training is designed not to be an exhaustive training, but instead how to leverage these essential components to build this 24/7 retargeting machine, right? That is what I'm excited about showing you, and this is where, we have helped so many businesses in the past using this. And the last thing I'll say is this, if you're an agency getting started, this is a really good opportunity to just get your foot in the door for a business, to set this all up for them, and then you can continue to upsell them your inbound ads or something like that. But if you are a traditional business right now watching this, what I'm going to say is this is probably going to be some of the best money that you've ever invested, because this system will work so long as you follow the process. So follow the process start to finish, and we'll get rolling on this. Now, I will say this. Let me jump ahead. Okay. Ad platforms are different, and we're going to get to this in Module 1 of which ad platforms to use. What I'm going to suggest to you is learn Meta first, because Meta is the most friendly for retargeting and remarketing. Obviously, what retargeting is based upon is the number of site visitors that you have. So if you have only a few, you're going to have to think much more broadly in this case. If you have a ton of website visitors, then you can get more nuanced in this, and you'll see kind of what I'm talking about when we get into audience segmentation and our logic behind building that. So before we get too much further, let's just go ahead and give you a real quick rundown of what is in this course. So Module 1, we're going to talk a little bit more about thinking about this correctly. Module 2 is actually getting into Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics to set this up. Module 3 is on UTM tracking. And the reason why we're introducing UTM tracking is because as we build out these ads in Meta and TikTok and in Google, you're going to have a chance to put this UTM tracking in there. And I want you to understand what you're doing before you just get into the ad platform. Now, the great thing about this is UTMs, there's dynamic templates for TikTok, there's dynamic templates for Facebook, there's dynamic templates for Google Ads. So really, you don't have to go in and understand like the total nuance behind this. And you don't have to create a new UTM for every single ad that you put out. You just kind of paste this in, and it will dynamically pull whatever you name your ad campaigns into your analytics. So that is it for this introduction. Let's go ahead and get into Module 1, and excited to continue on this thinking and this framework. And then once again, this will be short, but stick with me on this because I do think it's very important to understand what we're talking about first, and then we'll dive into each one of these platforms. All right, here we go. Let's dive into Module 1.